Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. TCH, can you hurry it up? We don't have all day to wait for you to finish arguing with your boyfriend. Tamari said with a TCH sound as she started making her way towards the arena. Whatever arguing that Naruto and Sayuri were having stopped, to which Naruto took a couple of steps away as Sayuri glared. He wasn't about to get between their little cat fight. He's not my boyfriend, Sayuri said with some venom in her voice at that, and for some reason Naruto felt like he was insulted in some way. She didn't need to say it that harshly in front of him even if it was true. Tamari hummed at this before looking at Naruto. Since he was no longer in that jumpsuit, he actually looked pretty good to Tamari's eyes. He is wearing a long-sleeve crimson shirt with thick black lines down the sleeves and has a hood. It was open to reveal a fishnet shirt showing a moderate build. He is also wearing black ninja pants and black sandals that go up the shin a little over his pants. With the new clothes, he's not bad. Means the guys here aren't that bad looking in the looks department. Tamari stated as she figured if he was worth anything then she could just make him her prisoner in the coming war. Sayuri just raised an eyebrow at this as well as Naruto did, but he looked her over. She wasn't bad looking either, so he was fine with the comment. Stay away from him, Yusuna hag. Sayuri bit out in defense for some reason, which made Tamari chuckle. You're surprisingly territorial over someone that isn't your boyfriend, Tamari stated with amusement in her voice as Sayuri blushed red at this. Also, what's going to stop me if I decide to make my move? The dumb ones are always the best to have as boyfriends. Easy to keep them in line. Oi, Naruto was completely ignored by the two of them. They're so mean. No respect, Naruto thought as he knelt down in a corner drawing circles with his fingers as he has a cloud of depression hanging over him. Why did everyone have to make fun of him because he ed at school and didn't seem like the most intelligent person out there? You will not touch my teammate, Sayuri said again, to which made Tamari amused even more. Oh, so that's your team dynamic. Who knew that Konoha had some rather erotic teams? You and the Pinky must have some great time with him, Tamari said to further antagonize her, to which both Sayuri and Naruto blushed, though in Naruto's case he was like most men and his mind went to locations in his imagination that he should probably stay away from considering his current location. Sakura, from where she was sitting, had the sudden urge to beat the ever-loving shit out of Naruto and hit someone from the sand for some reason. She shrugged before going back to waiting impatiently for the next match to start while trying to get Ino out of her shocked state. Back with Sayuri and the others, she was about to retort when Tamari just laughed and headed towards the arena, leaving a fuming Sayuri and pleasant-faced oblivious Naruto behind. She had done what she wanted to do and made her angry. Little did she know that this was just going to make Sayuri try harder to win. Sayuri turned to Naruto to ask why he didn't say anything to that before going down to the field to destroy a blonde-haired bitch when she saw his face. Her eyebrow twitched as an anime tick mark appeared on her head. She walked straight up to him, reeled back her leg and kicked him right where the sun don't shine. Naruto's eyes refocused and widened as Sayuri's foot left his crotch. His hands instantly covered his lower regions and did the slow fall forward. He smashed into the ground with a soundless scream and just laid curled up with hands over his nuts. All the guys there winced other than Gaara, who made note of the weakness. He never had to deal with it since his sand always protected him. Lucky bastard, Sayuri huffed as she reached the arena floor. Of course that bastard had to get all perverted over a stupid comment that will never happen. She had never thought Naruto as a pervert even if he had made that stupid jutsu of his. Boys, she muttered annoyingly as she walked towards Tamari and the proctor. Finally done flirting with your boyfriend? Tamari asked with a knowing smile, to which Sayuri just stared blandly back at her. She didn't even give a response as it seemed that Tamari wasn't going to stop anytime soon. Well, you two seem ready, Genma stated as he noticed the tense between the two. He had seen the styles both had and knew that this was going to be a ninjutsu battle mostly. It would be interesting as well because these two were actual kunoichi compared to most of girls that were in the competition in his opinion. Second round of the Chunin exams. Hajime. Genma stated before disappearing, not wanting to get in the way and not wanting to get in the middle of a ninjutsu battle that should commence shortly. As soon as he said those words, Sayuri ran towards Tamari at full speed. To Tamari, Sayuri was moving as a blur, but that didn't mean she couldn't keep up. Moving her fan towards one side, she blocked a kick that was aimed to her head before pushing her away and then using her fan as a blunt force weapon in a downward strike. Did you think I would be that easy to defeat by just getting within close range? Tamari stated with a smirk after Sayuri had jumped away. Sayuri scowled at how easily she was moving that heavy fan around as if she was holding a staff. She started to move around her in a circle at high speeds again as she was sure that taijutsu was her weakness, but it seemed she made sure it was at least proficient. It was Sayuri's more preferred style of ranged fighting, though she was probably better at ninjutsu. She moved to go into close range again, but Tamari wasn't going to have that. While she didn't mind taijutsu, her preferred range was long. She fully extended her fan and swiped it, causing a massive gust of wind to shoot at her. Sayuri's eyes bleed red as she activated the Sharingan. Sayuri's speed was hampered by the wind, but she pushed through. As she went, she seemed to move her body slightly as if seeing the wind blades that were a part of the gust. Sayuri moved around and into her range before going through a couple of combos of punches and kicks to see if there was something about her taijutsu style that she could use to break through her defense. Sayuri grimaced as she noticed that Tamari's taijutsu style with her fan was a defensive counter style. That meant that the Sharingan would be almost useless as Tamari seemed to react to an attack as it came. She would have to lower her speed so she could change her attack mid-sequence, but Tamari was no slouch when it came to speed, it seemed. Sayuri moved to kick her but noticed that Tamari was readying herself for another wind jutsu. Sayuri let her balance go and fell just as a futon blast went completely over her. Sayuri used her motion and spun around on her hands and side-kicked Tamari. Closing her fan, Tamari responded in kind by blocking and using that motion and power behind the kick to jump back. As she jumped back, she gathered a lot of chakra in her fan before sending out in a large area of effect futon jutsu as Sayuri was getting up. Sayuri quickly flew through hand seals, seeing this, and used one of the fire jutsu she had learned in the month from her clan's large library. Not that she told Kakashi she was training in them. Kaden. Goka Mekyaku. Sayuri said as a massive wall of flame shot out of her mouth and towards Tamari, consuming her jutsu and getting bigger. Tamari's eyes widened at this as it was a very large fire wall and she could already feel the heat. Shutting her fan and raising it above her head, she sliced downward and the whole wall shot to the side of her. Luckily for the audience, Sayuri's wall didn't reach the stands, but it got a lot of people screaming in panic. It was much smaller than Madara's, so don't complain. Tamari opened up her fan again and shot it back up. Futon. Daikamedachi. She yelled out as wind shot upwards, making the large wall of fire follow it. Sayuri ended her jutsu as she noticed the fire heading upwards instead of at its intended target now. Okay, WTF. Since when can Genin create a massive updraft? Sayuri thought, not realizing the redundancy of that thought as she had created a giant wall of flame as she could see the fire disappear a good distance into the air. She had heard that Tamari was good and was able to trounce that Tenten girl that was a year her senior, but come on, this was messed up. Up in the stands. I'm surprised. She was rather good in the preliminaries, but this is definitely high Chunin level. She definitely has been held back by her superiors to be on her brother's team. I'm not surprised that your student lost to her. Kakashi stated as he looked at the wide-eyed guy who was rather shocked by this. Hell, he was shocked by this. To be held back this much though, it has to be for a rather good reason for something like that. You don't think? Guy started to ask but trailed off as Kakashi seemed to be thinking on the same. That she was put on their team so she could keep her brother in check when her sensei isn't around. Her technique and skill are definitely much higher than Gaara's. She also has the experience with how she handled that fire jutsu. In a straight-up fight with Gaara not accessing that, then she would probably come out on top 7 out of 10 times. Kakashi stated with amazement over how young and skilled she was. Indeed, I have never seen a more refined element before in someone so young. She must have spent hours upon hours practicing it. The only thing that would cause her to lose is if Gaara brute forced his way through, and it doesn't help that she is scared of him. Guy stated, to which Kakashi was the one to nod this time. I'm surprised your student is doing so well. That was one of the more powerful fire jutsus, and I see you added speed to her training for when she was initially up against Gaara. Her speed and her fire affinity is keeping her in this one though. Guy stated with amazement, and Kakashi nodded at this as well. Fire has always been her strong suit in ninjutsu. That one though was nowhere near being mastered. It's based off the fireball technique, so I'm not surprised she got it down enough to be used at the level she is at. Kakashi stated, to which Guy nodded before they went back to concentrating on the match at hand. The match. You're much better than I was told. I thought you would underestimate me and play around more than being fully serious like you were with Tenten. Sayuri stated in genuine praise, as she was indeed strong. She was just happy that she had the stronger element in this. You're an Uchiha and praised to be one of the strongest genin around in Konoha. There's also a rumor going around that it was your team that took on Momochi Zabuza and you genin were instrumental in his defeat. Even if that wasn't completely true, I'm not stupid enough to hold back or be arrogant enough to play around with you. Tamari stated as she was now leaning on her closed fan that she had propped up in the dirt. I'll take that as a compliment. Sayuri said as there was a poof of smoke and a white-handled Chikuto appeared in her hand. Tamari blinked at it as she didn't think that Sayuri would bring out a close-range weapon like that, but she keeps forcing herself into close range, so it wasn't that much of a surprise. Tamari stood back up and kicked her fan back up into her hands and waited. She didn't have to wait long for Sayuri to appear before her, swinging her sword in basic arcs. All Tamari did was move her metal fan around, blocking her strikes. Tamari could tell that she was a beginner in the art, but it didn't help that the white light that followed the arcs of the sword were somewhat distracting. Sayuri came down with a diagonal strike which Tamari was readying herself for, but Sayuri switched from a forward grip to a backwards grip, delaying her strike by a second or two, allowing her to get behind the guard, causing Tamari to lean back out of the way. Electricity coursed down the blade, shocking her a bit and making her twitch at the slight pain before she brought her foot up. Tamari's kick connected with Sayuri's chin and the two separated. Tamari was twitching a bit. The electricity was quite effective despite only getting her by a small margin. Sayuri rubbed her chin as that had hurt quite a bit before letting go and spitting out some blood. So she has a lightning affinity also. It's not a surprise she hadn't used it yet, with my affinity being wind. She knows the basics of chakra streaming, but it's not that advanced yet. Still, dodging her blade is going to be tricky, as even if it's not that advanced yet, the effects will pile up. Tamari thought at the small break in the fighting they were getting. Her defense in close range is good. It's hard breaking it without some trick, and streaming my chakra is chakra heavy at my current level. Hopefully the small contact the Raiden chakra had was enough to slow her down enough where my speed will turn into a bigger advantage. Sayuri though to herself as she decided she would take things out of Naruto's playbook and be a bit reckless. She put her sword into the ground and started making hand seals. Kaden. Hosenka. Sayuri stated as she breathed out multiple fireballs. Tamari just huffed at the rather weak jutsu in terms of power. She would be able to get rid of the flames easily with her control of wind-based chakra. She swiped her fan, causing the flames to disappear before trying to see if Sayuri had moved. She didn't, which meant something else, and she turned her attention to where the flames had been. Shuriken were flying at her and were rather close now. She made an annoyed tch sound before fully expanding her fan and using it as a shield. After all the shuriken bounced off, she removed the shield to see that Sayuri was gone. Of course she was gone. She noticed that Sayuri was coming at her from two different directions. A clone jutsu, and considering who her teammate was, most likely shadow clones. Sayuri came flying at her from the sides and both slashed out. Temari, though, had jumped up and slammed them enough to make them disappear with wind. Temari blinked as both of them disappeared. She figured one of them would be the real one. Hey, got you, Sayuri said as she appeared next to her. Temari's eyes widened as Sayuri started to go through her taijutsu combo that she used in the prelims. With the final kick, Temari was sent towards the ground as she forced herself through the pain as she neared the ground. She used her fan to cause a gust of wind to slow her landing. She hit the ground on her feet before going to her knees and coughing up blood. She heard her brother yell out, so she moved out of the way as a grand fireball slammed into where she just was. Sayuri appeared next to where Temari was getting up only to get a wind chakra-infused fan to her side. Luckily Sayuri saw it just in time to block with her arm, but it felt like she took a giant sledgehammer to her side. Sayuri went flying and rolled a couple of times. She groaned in pain as her right arm is almost completely numb. She could only hope that it wasn't broken. Temari looked over to where Sayuri had stopped moving to see her cradle her arm. She sighed as she had time to rest up before she noticed something wrong with looking at her. Sayuri looked up as her eyes met the Temari's. Temari cursed instantly as she did not like what happened next. Temari looked around as she was now in a dark void. She looked around wondering something as she knew this was genjutsu. She suddenly felt extreme pain from her arm, to which she looked down and her eyes went wide as some giant demonic fox-like thing bit her arm off. She was completely missing an arm. She screamed out in anguish as another limb seemed to disappear into another demonic fox's mouth, blood spewing from her left arm and right leg. She bit on her lip before concentrating. This was the thing about genjutsu that she didn't like. Even if you could dispel it, it was hard to concentrate because you had to deal with the pain and distractions the genjutsu casts on the target. Kai, she muttered to herself before breathing deeply as the pain disappeared. Her mind was throbbing from the exertion the genjutsu caused on her mind. Even if it was a couple of seconds in terms of time, it had caused a good amount of damage mentally. Having your arms bitten off by some monster was not something she wanted to feel or mentally feel. Sayuri had to be one messed up person to make it so her limbs were being torn off like that. A foot suddenly connected to her face, making her cough out some blood as she rolled over, fan completely missing. She looked up as a shadow came over her and saw that Sayuri was about to plunge her sword right through her with the stance she was currently in. Ignoring the pain, she concentrated some chakra to her lungs before breathing out. A small gust of wind to Sayuri's face was enough to momentarily stop her assault and allow Temari to roll out of the way. She kicked herself to her feet before backing away. It didn't really help though, as she gasped in pain as she held her head and went to one knee. She needed to end this fast as her concentration was going down. Flipping through hand seals and having one eye closed from pain, she slammed her hands into the ground. Doden. Doryukatsu. Sayuri blinked at the name of this jutsu when the ground moved up and then parted underneath her. Since when can she use earth release? Futon. Kudan. A small blast of wind was sent from Temari into Sayuri. While it wasn't that damaging, it had enough momentum behind it to launch her from the air and into the side of the arena wall hard enough to do some major damage. Sayuri laid there groaning in pain. To everyone in the arena, it seemed like neither of them were going to last much longer with how they were going. Temari looked to see if she was getting up. She couldn't risk using more chakra. She had to save what was left and rest up for when the invasion starts. She'd rather not use a food pill if she could help it. She didn't like using them anyways, but if she had to, she would. She took out a kunai and threw it at Sayuri's, who was still not moving. As soon as it hit her, it went right through her. Quote. Temari stated as she realized that it was just a stupid clone. At this distance, it was almost hard to tell if it was a fake or not. Give up. A voice came from behind as she had been trying to get up and felt steel to the back of her neck. She looked around to see if it was her sword or not, but she saw it in the ground some distance away still. Good, that meant she had a kunai to her neck. She moved one of her fingers and her fan came flying at Sayuri, who moved back. Tamari caught her fan and the two just stared at each other. This was getting nowhere and it was grating on her nerves. She should have won this already and she had about one more jutsu in her. Both her and Tamari were battered and bruised already. Sayuri looked like she had gone through a blender with how many cuts she had, and Tamari had quite a few burn marks and bruises forming. Tamari is waiting for Sayuri to make the first move. Sayuri made some hand signs before charging forward. A loud screeching noise is heard as lightning appeared in her hand. Even if wind was stronger than lightning, she doubted Tamari had anything left that would beat her jutsu in strength. Tamari stared at the jutsu and readied herself. She knew that with the Sharingan, Sayuri could dodge an attack heading towards her and anticipate where she would move to dodge if she dodged early. She would either have to dodge at the last second, but the risk would be way too high. She had to calculate things at a fast rate. She had about one more jutsu to her as well. The genjutsu and damage she took would make her slower to react. She could use the last of her chakra to block and allow her time to react more at the last second, but she wasn't sure if she would recover enough to be effective in the invasion even if she thought it was stupid. She also had taken more damage physically than her. While she might have done a lot, Sayuri was more physically able to keep going and last longer in taijutsu than her. She was able to make Sayuri use a lot of her chakra and with this, use the last of her chakra. She was trying hard to defeat her and render her useless for the coming invasion, but this would have to do. With her out of chakra, she wouldn't be able to do much and her body is damaged. This got rid of a war asset for Konoha even if it wasn't much towards Konoha's defense since she was a genin. Hey, being Itachi's little sister was something even if it was just that. Potential is still potential and it was better to retreat here than get permanently damaged. I surrender. Tamari stated calmly, which made Sayuri fall over and laughter to be heard from up in the competitor box. Genma appeared back on the field. He was going to anyways with the Chidori being shown and would have stopped Sayuri from killing her. Winner of the second match, Uchiha Sayuri. Genma announced as Tamari walked away still holding her head which was still throbbing. She needed a rest. Genma chuckled as Sayuri twitched in annoyance at the abrupt end to her match. She created the Chidori for it to come to absolutely nothing but waste her chakra. Genma just shook his head at the idea of Sayuri even knowing it. He wasn't going to let Sayuri kill the Kasage's daughter anyways, but still. At the point in the match, it was a good move as Tamari couldn't move well enough to dodge it, and with the Sharingan, Sayuri would follow her or dodge a counter-attack. It was a smart move to retreat on Tamari's side then try and go for a win in unsavory conditions. Sayuri grumbled at this as she made her way back to the competitor box after resealing her sword. She was miffed as she had wanted to use the jutsu that took her almost the whole month to get and work to a combat-ready state. She showed it, but in such an uncool way. Hey, when did you steal the Kage Bunshin, Sayuri? That's my jutsu, damn it. Naruto said despite wanting to laugh at her for how her match ended, but this was more important. We sparred all the time after wave and you spam the crap out of it. How could I not have stole it? Still, it's better in my style since I use it better. Sayuri said with a smirk on her face as Naruto started going off on a rant. She just chuckled at this before walking over to the wall and unsealed a rather big scroll. She unraveled it and sat on a large seal. As soon as she did, she started to feel better as she activated the Fuinjutsu. She would never admit it, but the idiot was good at Fuinjutsu if he could do something like this. Now if he could just make the seal heal her faster, it would be much better. Oi, I told you to use that in an extreme situation, not here. You're wasting my hard work, damn it. Naruto yelled out as he finally noticed what was going on as he looked over to her as she had a yellow film of chakra around her. He muttered something about inconsiderate ravens and not listening to instructions. He worked on that for a week and only produced one. Bitch. You ready to go? The white-haired Sannin stated as he looked at his little escort. He would have brought Naruto along but he couldn't at the moment. The raven-haired Uchiha looked at him as she had just walked up to him. A determined look on her face rather than her usual arrogant smirk. She would find this Tsunade and have her save him even if she had to force the old female Sannin to do it. She wasn't about to let Naruto die after what happened. Rewind to a day earlier. I forfeit, Kankuro stated as he looked down at the arena, causing everyone in the stadium to blink at the sudden declaration. None of them expected something like this. Why would someone forfeit right before the match and make it this far just to do it? Alright, let's get on to the last match of the first round. Sabaku no Gaara and Uzumaki Naruto, please come down to the arena floor. Genma stated with a slightly bored tone as he wondered what they were feeding Genin these days to have them get that strong outside of wartime. Can you beat him, Dobi? Sayuri stated with a somewhat worried look on her face as Naruto cracked his neck. It was probably one of the few times that Naruto actually had a serious expression on his face. He might act and look like an idiot, but he wasn't that bad actually. Don't know. He's probably the most powerful Genin here. Naruto stated truthfully, but he was going to try anyways. He wasn't an expert at reading people's strengths, but he knew the guy was a Jinchuriki. He didn't have any good amount of control of his element if he had developed it. He had also seen what he could do with Lee. He would lose if he wasn't serious. Do you have a plan? Sayuri asked as he would need a plan to get through Gaara's defense. Kakashi gave her the play-by-play of what happened during Lee's and Gaara's fight. Even she didn't like what she was told and was weary of him. Nope. Sayuri's sweat dropped at his answer. How the hell could you go a month without a plan to fight him? If I wasn't getting healed, I would beat the hell out of you. Sayuri growled as she was still sitting on the scroll. This thing did not heal as fast as she wanted it to. And I have told you that the scroll only works fast if your life is in danger and that it's a one-time use. Either way, Gaara wasn't my main concern till now. I'm the only one that should fight him now anyways. Naruto stated as he never really viewed Gaara as his main concern till the start of the finals. He didn't mean that he wasn't a threat, it's just Neji took precedent, but that plan changed. He would have come up with a plan to fight Gaara after his fight with Neji, and now it was coming back to bite him. He would however do everything he could to beat Gaara now. He had something to show him and it was his duty as a Jinchuriki to fight another one of his kind, sadly. The only one to fight a Jinchuriki was another one. He wasn't going to take the risk of someone else fighting one. He knew the potential of what could happen. He was actually glad that Sayuri wasn't fighting Gaara anymore now that he knew. He had felt the Kyuubi's power in wave and that was just a small amount. No one but him should fight someone that looked like he threw that power around without much care. Naruto, are you scared? Sayuri questioned as she looked at him. He didn't look like it outwardly, but she had grown to know him more than she had before. She just had a feeling that he was, but wasn't showing it, like a lot of things that he kept hidden. Yup. There's a high chance I could die after all. I'm going up against someone that could literally throw a monster at me. Naruto stated as he was talking about the Shikaku and the fact that he had an idea that it could come out. He could probably beat Gaara, but the Shikaku was a much bigger problem that he didn't know if he could beat. You better not. I don't want to see anyone else that I'm close to die. Sayuri stated with concern as she looked away. Naruto just blinked at this before smiling as he looked back to her over his shoulder. He started to walk towards the stairs to the arena. Well, I guess I have a reason to not lose now. I don't want to think of you crying over my grave. It would just be weird and creepy. Naruto said with a smirk on his face as Sayuri bristled at this. She was being concerned about the idiot and he was joking around. Idiot. This will be the last time I show concern for you asshole. Sayuri yelled out as Naruto laughed lightly. Sayuri huffed as she couldn't believe she actually felt concern for the idiot if that was how he was going to react. She growled at him, but he just waved at her over his shoulder. That small gesture just seemed to put the sense of dread into her and made her even more worried. Pathetic. Showing care for someone more insignificant than you. Love is a pathetic excuse of emotion as everyone will betray you at some point. Gaara stated as he seemed to have been waiting for him to get down for their fight. Naruto just stared at him neutrally. Well, there's not much to life if you go around killing everyone. I do like interaction in my life after all. Naruto stated with a slightly amused tone as if the mere thought of doing what Gaara did was stupid. It also seemed to make Gaara bristle a bit. So you fight for others. You have the same eyes as I do and yet you care for others. I will enjoy crushing you. Gaara said with a sadistic grin. Naruto felt a slight shiver go down his back but he wasn't about to let it get to him. He had to stop him if he was going to do anything stupid like let the Biju take control. The moment I notice him losing control, I'm taking this fight outside the village. Naruto thought as he noticed the proctor about to give the signal for the start of the match. This was going to be probably one of the hardest fights in his life even with the fact that he has S-rank missing nins after him. Fourth match of the Chunin exams, Uzumaki Naruto vs. Sabaku no Gaara. Begin. The proctor said before disappearing like his life depended on it. He wasn't going to get between two Jinchuriki even if they were genin. He didn't know if the Biju would come out to play after all. As soon as he disappeared, Gaara stuck out his hand and the sand shot forth faster than it had before. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as this was much faster than in his fight with Lee. Naruto jumped back with a good amount of worry plastered on his face. He had thought about the speed of his sand but it getting faster with the direction and intent from him. He didn't think it would get faster with his intent behind it. Naruto hit the ground before flipping up to land on the wall behind him as the sand smashed seconds behind him on the ground. Within seconds, the sand came at him again. Naruto speed through hand signs as the sand got closer and closer. Just as the sand was about to hit him, the sand was blown back as lines of electricity arced around him. Raiden. Koboe. Naruto said as the sand was scattered around him. Naruto sighed in relief as he saw that it worked. Ha! I got it to work this time. Naruto thought with a laugh as he had never got it to work before. That and it was probably one of the weakest things he knew. Wait a minute, that was way too easy to block. Naruto said out loud as he looked at the lumps of sand that was floating. Ah shit. Seconds later a giant explosion rang through the arena as where Naruto was standing was reduced to a smoke pile. Gaara smirked at this as he thought he got him. He didn't see Naruto move or anything. He failed to notice though that a lot of the Jonin in the area were utterly quiet and shocked. Phew, that was a close one. Naruto said as he looked from right next to Gaara. Gaara's eyes widened in shock as he turned and swung his arm as sand arced with it. The redhead stared in shock as Naruto was definitely not where he was just a second ago. Despite not moving, you react well. Naruto said from a good distance away. He really had no clue what he was doing but that was a good test of the waters. He had figured a few things about his defense but he still had to think of a way to get by it. That defense of yours only reacts to things in a certain about of feet of you. You stay outside the radius, it just sits there. Still annoying though. Naruto stated trying to seem smart but it just made everyone's sweat drop. That seemed like a pretty obvious conclusion even without testing it. Soon a shuriken. Gaara retorted as his sand moved in front of him and clumps of sand shot out at Naruto. Naruto pulled out two kunai and threw them at Gaara before making a couple of hand signs. It wasn't that hard what technique he was going to use as it was allowed to most Chunin and even some genin could use it. Kunai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto shouted as the two kunai become a couple dozen. The two techniques meet and cancelled each other out. Naruto just stood back up and looked at Gaara with a dry look. Not much of a conversationalist are you? Gaara just looked at him with his same neutral expression but he seemed to have an annoyed twitch on his face. Naruto blinked as he noticed something moving around his leg. Naruto looked down and saw that sand had circled around his leg. This time Gaara made a rather amused look. Naruto was suddenly lifted into the air as sand broke out from underground. Naruto was then thrown into the arena wall and made a good-size indent on the wall. He coughed up some blood and groaned in pain. He just laid there for a couple of seconds before breaking out slightly. He looked back at Gaara just to see a torrent of sand flying at him again. This time, Naruto didn't look panic and just smirked. Orange bleed into his eyes before everyone saw how he got away this time. Naruto just seemed to disappear in a yellow flash. This made the whole stadium go extremely quiet. Everyone from Konoha were wide-eyed as the resemblance that everyone could see but ignored now came to the front of their minds. Yo, Yondaime. One of the ninjas that had seen the Yondaime work in war stated in a shocked tone. Naruto appeared a second later next to Gaara and smashed him right in the face with a strong punch that sent him flying. Sadly, it didn't do much damage as it only cracked his sand armor and the sand stopped whatever impact the landing would give as it cushioned him. The stadium seemed to erupt a second later as everyone was cheering. Naruto, however, lost his composure and started to rub his bruising back. Getting smashed into the wall was not the most pleasant feeling. Gaara sat up undamaged and just stared. Even he heard about the fabled technique of the Yondaimes. How could someone like you learn the Hiraishin? Gaara scowled as the blonde was an idiot and a loser in his eyes. To see someone like that use the Hiraishin was something that he could not comprehend. Naruto blinked at this as he turned to look at the non-attacking Gaara. He would keep his guard up for attacks from underground this time. Hiraishin. PFF'd. That's funny. There's no way to learn that technique in a month no matter how much of a genius you are. That was an extension of the Shunshin no Jutsu that just has the same side effects as the Hiraishin in terms of flash. I call it Senka. Naruto stated with a smile on his face as he continued to rub his back. I'll tell you about it. Senka is a rather special technique as it requires both wind and lightning affinity chakra at the same time, creating a special wavelength that allows both to be used in conjecture with each other. I'm able to use the bases of Shunshin to quadruple my speed. Look at where I was standing before. Naruto said, pointing at the wall, and nothing about where he was standing seemed perturbed. That was strange since the amount of force needed to quadruple his speed should have broken the parts his feet were at. Using the Shukuchi method of feet movement, I'm already able to move faster. Add in Shunshin as a base with wind chakra adding a buffer and lightning chakra adding a more reflexive nature to the technique. The two together with the Shunshin and Shukuchi give me the necessary power to increase my speed by 4 folds. It also caused little to no damage to the surroundings and is quite quiet. Naruto stated, explaining his technique like he hasn't a care in the world. That's impossible. Using both wind and lightning chakra at the same time is utterly impossible. Wind would just cancel out lightning. There are no Kekkei Genkai out there that have a combination of both either that I know of. Gaara spoke with a sneer as he looked at the blonde-haired orange-eyed boy. Wait, orange. Well, there's a little more to it, but I'm not going to give all my secrets away. I have been told though that I'm probably the only one stupid enough to try. Granted, it's a miracle I didn't make my legs explode or something. Naruto stated with a smirk on his face as Senka was his pride and joy. Well, stupid people do stupid things but they always get results. Well, let's go wild. Naruto said with another smirk before disappearing. Gaara, however, didn't seem concerned. He already had a good enough strategy to deal with fast people after having to fight Lee. Naruto was just going to be the unlucky person that would be the first to test it out. Up in the stands, Sakura, Ino and Choji just stared at what they just saw. Wah! How the hell did that idiot get so fast? Ino basically screamed out as she looked down on the field as the people around them cheered like crazy. I have no clue. The explanation alone makes me shiver from the pain he probably went through. That idiot, Sakura said with a shiver. What do you mean, Sakura? Choji asked as he was kind of confused as to what was going on. According to what I have read, using 2 affinities at once is a massive strain on the body even for Jonin. It's why you don't see ninja using two techniques at once or without a medium. You use twice as much chakra no matter how good you are at chakra control, and it puts a strain on your chakra coils and body. That's why you see different element techniques go one after another, because it's almost impossible to do at the exact same time. Sakura stated with a shocked tone. What about Kekkei Genkais? They use two elements at once. Ino asked with a tone of wonder. They don't use two elements at once. They create a new singular sub-element from two. The problem is when you release a technique, you're releasing a hold on your chakra. You have the potential to lose control of the build-up extra element you had prepared, which would deal damage to yourself. However, a Kekkei Genkai makes a singular element from two and you only have to control one. You have no risk of damaging yourself. Also, you need a special trait to be able to create that sub-element. Sakura summarized what she knew on the subject. Good studying, Sakura, though almost everything you just said is restricted to Hai Chunin and Jonin. Kakashi stated with an eye smile. I may or may not have asked the Hokage if I could get some help in my training since you were gone. Sakura stated with a sheepish tone. It's fine, Sakura, as long as you got permission. I just hope you haven't been trying anything that will hurt you without supervision. Kakashi stated before looking down at the field again. He can probably do it easy enough because of how his body has grown. Guy stated, to which Kakashi nodded, as they were talking about his body growing accustomed to the Kyuubi. The kids, however, thought something completely different. It's starting back up again. Kakashi stated with he pulled his headband up. He caught sight of Naruto, who was speeding towards Gaara. His eyes widened though by what he saw. What the hell is that? Kakashi thought as he couldn't comprehend what was going on in Naruto's body. Back down in the arena, Naruto appeared over Gaara and slammed a foot down at him. His kick, however, was intercepted as sand came up in a protective barrier. Naruto pulled his leg back fast enough where his sand wouldn't grab onto him. More sand came up to form a shield in front of the red head before spikes shot out at Naruto. His foot barely touched the ground before he jumped back, narrowly avoiding the spikes that launched at him. He skidded across the ground as a spike stopped a good inch from his face. Naruto jumped back again to get a good distance away. Naruto breathed out deeply as that was a close one. Blood fell down his cheek as he could feel cuts on both of his arms, sides and legs. This already was bad as Naruto had only punched a crack into his armor which already fixed itself and he had been through into a wall and cut. The blonde looked at Gaara and saw that the redhead had cocooned himself in a sandball. Great. Just great. How was he supposed to get through that? Well, he had a way, but he wanted to save that for the finals. He didn't want to use it on this psycho. I guess I could give a shout out to my mom. Nah. I added and it wastes way too much chakra. That and I need to save energy for my next match. Naruto stated as he could use the chakra chains, but he wasn't any good with it. He knew that he would never be good with it. The Kyuubi even laughed at him when he produced the best he could. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 4 Narutos appeared around him and they all charged the sand ball on multiple angles. They all moved out of the way of spikes that came at him and slammed into the wall, but it didn't even budge. He did, however, see something. Naruto, a safe distance away, watched this, and when all his clones were popped, he looked up to see a floating eyeball. So he had something that allowed him to see what was going on outside of that sand ball. He could use this to his advantage. Well, wanted to save it, but here it goes. Naruto said to himself before grabbing a tagged kunai and threw it at the ball. It didn't do anything except kick up a bunch of smoke. The eyeball moved around trying to see through the smoke and it eventually moved up out of the smoke. It didn't see Naruto at all. It moved around to find the blonde, but no luck. Gaara above. Temari yelled out from her place in the stands. The eye moved up only to see Naruto come down with something that made everyone go wide-eyed to see in a genin's hand. Rasengan. Naruto shouted as the smoke was blown away from the high-powered movement the technique brought. Naruto smashed into the hardened sand sphere and a large explosion of wind shot out from the impact point. Within seconds, The sphere gave way under the pressure of the technique. Once the wall of the sphere broke down, Gaara's eyes widened in shock at how Naruto broke through his defense. Gaara had just enough time to throw some sand at Naruto to move him away, but it didn't stop Naruto from hitting him in the arm. Ah! Gaara screamed as the technique exploded on his shoulder and sent him flying. It was the first actual damaging hit Naruto had landed on him all match. Both of them went flying in opposite direction as Naruto's face was also in a look of pain. It's like getting hit with a sledgehammer. Naruto thought as he fly across the arena floor as Gaara tumbled and crashed into the far wall. Naruto started rolling on the ground before sliding onto his feet. He looked up to where Gaara was as the smoke cleared around him. Gaara's left arm was shredded at the shoulder and bleeding profusely. He wasn't really affected by the crash as his sand protected him again. Gaara looked up at Naruto glaring at him badly as sand started to wrap around Gaara. Naruto felt a malicious presence as a large killing intent was thrown at him. It was coming from Gaara and it was before, but this was much bigger. He was letting the demon out to play. You've pissed me off, Uzumaki Naruto. Half of Gaara's form transformed into a strange look as a tail made of sand waved behind him. Naruto swallowed with a gulp as he already knew what was happening. An explosion sounded, causing Naruto's eyes to glance up to the cage area to see smoke all over them. He was worried for the old man, but his eyes went to Gaara, who appeared next to him. Naruto disappeared and appeared on the wall as the sand arm flew through where he was a second ago with probably a great deal of force. Ha ha ha, is that all you've got? Come and catch me. Naruto shouted at Gaara as he turned around and stuck his butt out at Gaara. He slapped it a couple of times before disappearing. Gaara roared at that before charging after him and disappearing over the wall. Naruto! Sayuri yelled out as she appeared in the middle of the arena. She was about to give chase as she had been quiet for the last couple of minutes as she watched their fight. She was stopped, however, by the proctor as he appeared in front of her, blocking multiple kunai in the process. Get out of my way. This isn't the time. Leave Gaara to Naruto. Right now we're in the middle of a war, it seems. I just never thought that Suna would betray us. Genma stated, causing her to look around. She noticed that everyone in the stands were falling asleep and realized that it was Genjutsu. I don't care. I'm going after Naruto. Sayuri growled out as she headed around the two, circling around them only to get smashed by someone else. She blocked and skidded back. She looked up to see a silver-haired teen with red eyes smirking at her. Ahaha, Uchiha-chan. You get to play with me. Normally I would kill you before heading off to kill the blonde with that cursed blood of his. However, Orochimaru wants you alive, so if you want to help the idiot you have to go through me. The silver-haired boy wearing a black sleeveless shirt and black shinobi pants said. There was also a rather crazed look on his face that sent shivers down Sayuri's back. The Sharingan bleed into her eyes as she got ready to fight. Naruto sighed as he looked over his shoulder to see Gaara chasing him like a madman. He hadn't got that far from the village yet to fight another Jinchuriki without damaging or endangering the village. He already knew this battle was going to be hard. He wasn't as strong as Gaara was. He was at another level in terms of power. Granted, that didn't mean he wouldn't have a chance to win. As long as he kept his cool and actually thought of things to catch him off guard, he could win. He thanked the gods that Gaara was a raging psychopath, as that gave him an edge of the red head. The other problem was that if he didn't end this fast, he had the potential of having to face the Aikibi. That was the biggest problem and one of the reason he was having Gaara come on this wide goose chase. He needed time to think of a plan or have enough time to pull something out of his to end this quickly. This was also very much annoying as he wasn't the thinker. He was the muscle and battering ram on the team. He would usually leave the planning to someone who could think far ahead like Shikamaru or Sakura or even the princess herself. He was one to think of things on the fly that either were stupid but effective or just downright insane but effective. He also didn't have time to see anything up for a prank, well trap, but he just liked calling them pranks more than anything. Having a homicidal redhead after you doesn't give you much time to set up an elaborate trap to catch him off guard or even wound him. He was also rather limited in what he could do against the Sand Nin. With the boy's automated defense, he had only one or two jutsu that could actually get through it. That was the Rasengan and the chakra chains. However, the second one was an issue in and of itself. He was surprised to know that he picked up the hidden jutsu that seemed to be passed down through their blood, but the problem is that the Uzumaki bloodline traits he had inherited from his mother, like their longevity and the chakra chains, got diluted. His father's blood seemed to cause the Uzumaki blood to weaken in him for some reason. It's why he didn't have the Uzumaki red hair, and his longevity he inherited was probably not at the level of an actual Uzumaki. It's another reason why he could effectively use the chakra chains. Uzumaki. Gaara roared from behind him, throwing a sand arm out, to which Naruto twisted his body out of the way. While the sand arm went inches past him, he threw his arm out. An ethereal spiked chain shoot out and missed his head by centimeters. TCH. Naruto scoffed at the miss as the chain disappeared. Me. Note to self, if I make it out of here, work on my aim with it. That and punch the living crap out of San if I do indeed die from this. Naruto growled out in his head as he landed on the branch and took off. One was pretty much his limit in combat, and his shot to actually quickly defeat Gaara was thrown out to the wind right now because of his crappy aim. Get back here. Gaara bellowed at the blonde, who sighed again, this time using a tree to block the sand from his immediate path. Alright, time to be a ninja and cheat. Naruto muttered to himself as he had no way to actually outpower Gaara unless he cheated. Sure, he had the Rasengan, but that thing was useless unless he actually hit someone with it. Granted, with his speed he did have the advantage, but it went to show that even then Gaara would counter to take minimal damage from it. Ah, this is annoying. I hate thinking about plans. I just get a headache. Naruto groaned to himself as he passed a tree. As soon as Gaara passed the tree to get Naruto in his sight again, Naruto had completely disappeared. Gaara stopped and his eyes narrowed. He roared in anger as he lost sight of his prey. Get out here, Uzumaki Naruto. Gaara roared loudly as Naruto leaned up against a tree trunk, it protecting him from the redhead's direct view. His hand was lightly shaking, causing him to look at his hand with a sigh. He could tell what this meant. Guess I went over my limit with the speed. Gaara is indeed fast in that mode. I need to switch tactics for now. Cheating it is. Naruto thought again as he smirked. He could fight dirty. He was a ninja after all, and he was always one for pissing someone off. It was funny after all, and the redhead did need to lighten up. Gaara was getting pissed more than he already was. His opponent was here, but he couldn't find him. He hated sneaking around, and he hated opponents that hide like this. Gaara's eyes widened as he turned around and swiped his hand. His sand seemed to tear completely through Naruto, only for it to pop in smoke. He turned the other way as another blonde came at him. Swiping his hand again, and his sand tore through the clone again. He growled as he could easily tell what the blonde was doing, and it just pissed him off more. He seemed to do this a couple of times before the attacks seemed to stop. Boom, bitch. Naruto said with a smirk as trunk and branch where Gaara was standing exploded. Bark and smoke went flying everywhere. Gaara fell from the smoke growling, but not that harmed by the overall explosion. He could tell that the blonde used his clones to place tags while distracting him. Hiding like this. You bastard. Gaara screamed as more sand wrapped around his body. He felt something grab one of his arms and was thrown into a tree. A second later, the trunk behind him exploded into shrapnel, slashing through his sand on speed alone as he was sent forward again as something grinded into his back. Landing on another branch after flipping over and spiraling through the air, Gaara looked up as Naruto landed on the ground. So you think you've won because of a field advantage? Not enough. Gaara screamed out as his back was bleeding badly as well, sand protecting the new wound while it healed. As soon as he said that though, sand exploded from the ground, cracking the trees and making them start to fall. Naruto looked down as a large area of the ground was now sand. Oh come on. He can change the landscape. He had the worst luck. This was just getting out of hand and fast. How was he supposed to fight on sand when he can control it all? Back at the Chunin exams arena, Sayuri was on her hands and knees breathing hard as sweat dripped down her face. Who the is this guy? He's too strong, she thought as she looked at the silver-haired teen. It was like fighting Haku all over again, but this time, nothing worked and he was playing around with her. Haku, on the other hand, just didn't want to kill them. He was just literally playing around with her. Is that all you've got, Uchiha-chan? I haven't even been trying. The silver-haired teen said with a laugh. She growled as she slowly got to her feet. This guy wanted to go after Naruto. He already had his hands full with Gaara. He didn't need this guy after him as well. At least use the curse mark. If you don't at least use it, it won't make this any fun. It will give me a warm-up before killing that blonde. The man stated, getting the full Uchiha death glare from Sayuri. If he wasn't sure she was lower than him in skill, that might have actually scared him. Ma, what do you think you're doing to my cute little Genin? A voice came from right behind the teen, making his eyes go wide before jumping to the side. The silver-haired teen looked to see that it was none other than Hitaki Kakashi with his normal eye smile. Hitaki Kakashi, the teen stated with a growl as Kakashi looked at him with both of his eyes. The Sharingan making the man look just like the rumors made him. Absolutely dangerous in all rights. It's amazing. I didn't think I would actually see a member of the extinct beast clan. Orochimaru definitely knows how to find things. Still, you're no match for me, though I have to admit, you're pretty strong to treat fighting Sayuri here like a game. Kakashi stated in his normal tone that just seemed to annoy everyone it was directed at. Sayuri, go after Naruto. Right now, this boy is out of your league. Kakashi stated to Sayuri, who just glared at the man. She wanted to finish this fight and defeat him. She needed to do it to prove herself. However, making sure that Naruto is alright was much more important. She nodded at this before taking off into the direction that Naruto had been heading in before. Where do you think you're going? The teen from the Beast clan yelled out as he started to charge at her. His eyes widened though as Kakashi appeared behind him and back-fisted him in the side of the head. I said I was your opponent. Kakashi stated as the teen growled. He was supposed to defeat the Uchiha and in the confusion take her. Chakra exploded around him as the silver-haired teen's body took a more beast-like appearance. Kakashi's face became serious as the teen became a bigger threat now that he was using his Kekkei Genkai. With the Sandaime, so the Beast clan wasn't extinct. You certainly know how to find meddling things. The old Hokage stated as he glanced to the arena floor. He wasn't worried though as he had seen the clan in action before, but Kakashi would be able to deal with even an intermediate level member of that strange clan. It was just luck. When I found the boy, he was almost dead and starving. He was rather interesting as his instincts at that point were just like a beast. He tried to eat me. Orochimaru stated with a shrug as well as a rather amused look on his face as he remembered the encounter. That clan is nothing but a nuisance. He also appears to harbor a hatred towards the Uzumaki. I'm guessing that is your doing. Sarutobi asked as they reached a somewhat of a stalemate in their battle at this point. They weren't done by a long shoot, but they were reading themselves. I might have had a thing to do with it. I wanted to see what would happen if I told him the truth. Still, even Kakashi will have his hands full with that one. He is stronger than he looks. Orochimaru stated with a sadistic smirk on his face, and Sarutobi frowned. He wasn't going to let that boy find Naruto. He wasn't ready to take that child on if what he could see was anything to go by. Back with Sayuri, she growled as she made her way through the forest. It was easy for her to figure out where she needed to go. The two running wasn't hard to follow when branches and trees were damaged. Gaara sure made it easy for someone to follow them. She suddenly stopped, however, as she looked around. There were 7 ninja around her and they all looked ready to fight. So the boy couldn't hold you. That or he is facing someone better than him at this moment. Orochimaru was right to have another means of capturing you. Surrender. One of the ninjas stated, to which she just smirked. These guys didn't seem like much, but she wasn't about to go by just their appearances. Off, she stated as she readied herself. One of the ninja charged at her, obviously offended by what she just said. She noticed that they weren't on the level of the last guy. That was for sure. This guy's speed was something she could follow. She sidestepped out of the way of a strike, grabbed the guy's wrist and twisted. She almost snapped it just by the fluid movement and power behind it. She brought her leg up, twisting slightly to come down with a powerful kick. Her eyes turned to see a kick flying towards her face. She let go of the guy's arm, crossed her arms and blocked. She went sailing up, considering she was almost parallel with the ground a few seconds ago, and started to make hand signs. Kaden. Hosenka, she said, blowing a large amount of fireballs at them. All of them scattered away as the fireballs crashed into the ground. She landed upside down on a branch before disappearing in a burst of speed. She appeared with her feet on the chest of one, with her hands pushing a kunai into the guy's neck. She jumped off and landed on a branch as the guy she just killed plummeted to the ground. 1 down, 6 or 7 to go, she stated as she made more hand signs, to which she drew her hand away. Lightning burst into life on her hand. She had to hurry through these guys to help Naruto. They weren't that much, a little over Chunin level, as well as the demon brothers. She could take them now at their full strength after her training with Kakashi. They picked the wrong person to deal with. Back with Naruto. Naruto was not fair, so well would be the understatement of the century. Naruto coughed as he pulled himself from the rubble of a tree trunk, his eyes blue again. The bastard just loved to throw him into stuff and play around with him. That's how it seemed to be going, at least. It also didn't help that he had one arm out of commission. If he was anyone else, he would be screaming in utter pain right now, what with his crush arm and everything. The bastard smashed him into the new desert he just made in the middle of the forest and tried to crush him completely. Luckily for Naruto, he didn't succeed, but the asshole still took an arm. Uzumaki, die, the raging Gaara said, appearing before him in his almost full-body demonic state. Naruto moved his body back enough for the strike to hit, but he was still launched backwards by the force of the attack. This shit was getting more and more risky by the second. You better not. I don't want to see anyone else that I'm close to die. The voice of Sayuri appeared in his head and he made an annoyed tch sound at this as he landed on the sandy ground again, only to flip as the sand below him tried to eat him. Why do I have to think of that bitch now? It's annoying having to think of a plan to beat him, but for me to think of her at a time like this annoys me more. It's not like she would cry if I do die anyways. He thought, dodging more sand that tried to capture him. As soon as he finished that thought though, Naruto felt a slight pain in his chest. Would she be sad? Who else would be sad if he died? He knew there would be a lot of people who would love the fact he died, but could he leave behind the people who did actually care for him? Naruto then remembered her hold him when he cried his eyes out rather pathetically. She might be a bitch, but she still seemed to care. More images of her appeared in his head before settling on someone that changed his perspective on his life. When you truly have something to protect, you'll become strong. The voice of Haku said something similar, but he didn't remember fully. What the hell was this though? Trip down memory lane. Now he had his own mind nagging on him with people he knew. Ah, I see. I care for her, he thought as he realized for the first time that he truly cared for someone. He wanted to protect her, and that was strange considering that she could very well protect herself. He opened his eyes and they bled orange, but this time, they accompanied something else. Naruto, I'll tell you this right now. Never use that, and I mean never. Senka is already dangerous enough considering what it does, but less risky as those are your natural affinities. You made something completely reckless with your Fuinjutsu. I don't even want to think about what that could do to your body if you use that fully when you have nothing that aligns you with that side of things. This time, It was the voice of Jiraiya, and Naruto sighed as he was going to do something stupid. Sorry Ero Sanin. Looks like I'll be taking that step forward. Naruto said as he didn't even seem to care about the sand now creeping up and flying at him as he stood in one place. Lines started to trace down his body in some kind of tribalistic fashion. Senka. Tazagare Onmyo, Flash Blossom. Twilight Yin Yang, Naruto muttered as his body felt like it was on fire as his body was engulfed in black and white chakra. Cracking could be heard as Naruto's destroyed arm is fixed as he was now moving it. Gaara stared in shock at what he was seeing before Naruto disappeared, and the next thing he knew he was plowed into the ground. Ga! Naruto said, going to one knee and holding the arm he just used to plow Gaara into the ground. His body was in immense pain and it felt like his skin was being ripped off slowly and then healed before feeling like it was being ripped off again. His arm felt completely crushed and unusable, but he could still move it. He felt even stronger even though the pain was almost unbearable. It felt stronger than the time he used the small amount of chakra he used that time in Wave when he tapped into the Kyuubi's chakra. Rumble. Naruto looked up as his body was still ablaze in thick chakra. His whitened eyes stared at the moving rubble of where Gaara currently was. The rubble exploded as Gaara jumped out and stood at the top of the crater they were in. Gaara was utterly pissed. I won't lose to something like you. Gaara screamed as his whole body was now that of a mini Shukaku. Naruto grunted before standing back up as the pain was making it hard to think, but he wasn't going to stop. He was going to make sure that Gaara didn't make it to the village even if it killed him at this rate. And I will protect the people I care for. Naruto said as his mind started to get muddled. He wouldn't think. The only thing he would do is beat Gaara into the ground until his body gives out. There was nothing else he could do at this point, but there was no way he was going to give up to someone that could have been him at the flip of a coin. Die. Futon. Mugen Saijin Daitapa. Gaara yelled out before breathing in and released a giant blast of sand and wind. It screeched towards Naruto, but he didn't move. All he did was widen his stance a little and cross his arms, fully intending to take the blast head on. Senka. Genbu. Naruto muttered those two words as the blast hit him with an explosive collision. The smoke cleared rather fast to reveal Naruto's flaming body enveloped in a see-through majestic turtle made completely out of black and white chakra. Senka. Byako. Naruto muttered out as the white and black chakra formed a more tiger-like appearance. Naruto looked more like a hellcat more than anything, considering the chakra made him look like he was on fire. Naruto leapt at him, but he didn't have the extremely fast speed that he had before. Gaara moved to block the strike, putting a ton of sand between him and Naruto. As soon as Naruto's fist hit the sand burst out of the way as white and black energy burst through, barely missing Gaara's head. Naruto came up with a punch to his gut. The punch connected, blowing the sand on his chest out of the way as well as the sand directly behind him as well. Black and white chakra exploded through Gaara as his face contorted to pain. Blood erupted from his mouth as he was launched into the air. His stomach was fully visible as even the cloth that was behind the sand was gone. I won't accept this. He screamed out with blood flying from his mouth as he did. Gesturing with his hand, sand shot out of the mini desert he made and grabbed Naruto. Naruto didn't seem to care as he was picked up off the ground and smashed back down. A loud crunching noise sounded through the area as Naruto's arm was crushed to a pulp. Naruto slowly stood back up as the tendril was still attached to his most likely mangled arm. Low growling could be heard coming out of his mouth as he moved to the other direction from the tendril. Tearing was the next thing Gaara heard as he landed back on the ground. Gaara stared in a mix of amazement and fear. The concept of fear was alien to him, but if what he was feeling matched the scene in front of him, he would acknowledge it. Bakemono. Gaara muttered as he literally saw the fireball in front of him rip his arm off to get away from the sand. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part is the arm was growing back. It was like nothing he did hurt him, let alone did anything. The regeneration that was going on made it seem that way. GAAARRRRRWWWW. Naruto roared out as chakra skyrocketed again as the air around them was blasted away. The inhuman roar backed up what Gaara said. What Gaara didn't realize is that Naruto was completely unconscious. All that was left of his mind was his instincts, and that was the only thing keeping him going. Naruto just couldn't handle the technique nor the pain that accompanied it. As soon as his arm was crushed, he was out like a light. Gaara launched spikes made of sand at the monster in front of him, but the fire monster grabbed the ones that would hit him and crushed them. Gaara basically screamed out after this and making a few hand signs. "I'll show you a true monster. I won't be defeated by a fake." Tanuki Niri no. The jutsu wasn't completed as Naruto's chakra form took a more draconic appearance, even having dragon-like wings on his back. Next thing that Gaara knew was that he was floating as blood and sand spewed everywhere. Gaara looked down as the sand was ripped from his stomach area and that he had 3 long cuts across it. Gaara didn't know what was going on as he was being hit every few seconds. They weren't damaging cuts or anything, but it was happening too fast for him to track. The small version of his big that he was wearing was literally being ripped away. He couldn't understand it. This monster, this idiot scared him. This loser was beating him. Everything that he did was just healed almost instantly. How could the blonde change like this in a month? How was he supposed to fight something, as he refused to call the blonde human at this point, that couldn't die? Gaara, for the first time in his life, was completely helpless. He barely had any taijutsu skills. Even after the months since Rock Lee fought him, he didn't think to add it to his skills. He still beat him, and yet, he couldn't do anything against Naruto, who was obviously lacking in any true taijutsu skill. No, 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 no. I will not die. Gaara basically screamed in his head as he willed all the sand to him. All the sand in the area converged on him, pushing Naruto away from him as he slammed into the ground from the force the sand carried. The draconic Naruto looked up to see the full form of the Shukaku. Gaara wasn't through yet. He used a lot of chakra to form Shukaku himself without falling asleep, but he still could. He wasn't through yet. "Now you die, Bakemono." Gaara screamed out, forming the jutsu he used before, and was out like a light. "Ha ha ha. I'm finally free and now I can kill that brat." Shukaku laughed as his voice boomed over the area. The Biju looked down at Naruto before laughing even harder at what he saw. To think someone is stupid enough to try forcing a strange form of yin and yang to appear in the body without being naturally attuned to it. Naruto just charged Hibiju with full speed, but this was a Biju after all. Naruto was not moving fast enough to be able to catch it off guard. With one swipe of its hand, Naruto was launched through the forest like he was an annoying gnat. The force was enough to shock Naruto awake as he laid in the new gorge his body made. He wondered when he passed out and tried to move. His body seemed to pulse almost immediately as he coughed loudly, to which blood shot out of it. Naruto slowly sat up as his body started to convulse in slight spasms. He needed to finish this fast or he would eventually pass out for good. He doubted he could fight again in an almost unconscious rage mode. Naruto's eyes widened slightly as sand suddenly encompassed him. Naruto spoke out as he acted fast. Swiping some blood off his lips, he formed a few hand signs and put it on the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. In a large puff of smoke, Naruto sat on top of the head of the boss toad. This, however, seemed to worsen whatever was happening to Naruto's body as blood burst from his shoulder. "What the? Who dares? What do you want this time, brat?" Gamabunta exclaimed, realizing who was on top of his head, but the chakra he was feeling from the kid was strange. He could also smell blood coming from the area, and the small amount of liquid he felt on his head showed the kid was in barely working condition. He was soon distracted though as Shukaku launched a giant blast of air at them. Quick on his amphibian feet, he jumped out of the way. "Teppadama!" Gamabunta exclaimed, launching a ball of water from his mouth that the Shukaku hopped out of the way of. "This is a hassle. I don't want to fight the Shukaku." Gamabunta said with a sigh of annoyance. He really didn't, as he had enough of a hard time when he faced the Kyuubi. Fighting one Biju in a lifetime was more than enough for him. Thank you very much. Please boss, help me protect them. Naruto groaned out in pain as he begged the giant toad. Gamabunta sighed before pulling out his giant tanto and got ready. Naruto could only smile weakly at this as he held the spot that his blood exploded from. I'll show you how our clan protects their underlings. Gamabunta said, jumping forward, dodging another blast of wind to come up with a slash of his tanto. Gamabunta grunted in exertion before cutting the large arm off. Granted, it was sand, so it would probably regenerate. You frog bastard, you'll pay for that. Shukaku yelled out before launching another blast of air at them. Gamabunta countered with his own water ball and jumped away to gain a little more breathing room. This isn't working. Naruto responded to this and Gamabunta grunted in agreement. His body is hard. I had to use all my strength to cut through just his arm. I'm guessing the boy on his head is the medium. You have to wake him up. You got any abilities that can make it to him? The boss toad asked, making Naruto think for just a few seconds. I have something that will work like one. Can you hold him back for a minute? Naruto growled out, standing up and breathing deeply, trying to clear his thoughts. He didn't understand this power any more than anyone else. He just knew what to do, like with the rest of the abilities he's shown today. You got it, Gamabunta stated before getting ready. He doubted that even the Shukaku could capture him in sand fast enough, and he knew water jutsus, so that was out. He knew the Biju wasn't an idiot. Crazy yes, but no an idiot. Yay, another annoying piece of trash. Just like me, kill the fox brat already. Shukaku exclaimed as a black ball started to form in front of its snot. Gamabunta's eyes widened and knew how dangerous those things were, and he happened to be in the direction that Konoha was. Jumping to the side, he was able to drag Shukaku towards him in terms of aim. Shukaku fired the mass of energy and he was barely able to dodge it by jumping. Gamabunta glanced in the direction it was going and watched as it hit a mount, and the explosion seemed to destroy a good portion of it. Well, this is getting dangerous. Gamabunta stated before looking forward, only to get a blast of wind smashed into him, causing a small explosion of dust. The giant toad came out of the smoke with a bunch of bruises over his body. That hurt you, rodent. Ha ha ha, take that, you frog. Shukaku laughed before firing another blast of wind, which was blocked by water again. Gamabunta used the smoke screen caused by the clash to get up close and grabbed onto him. You ready yet? Gamabunta asked, but he got no response and he was knocked back by the only arm Shukaku had left. Damn, I don't have claws or teeth. I can't hold on to him. That's fine, boss, you don't need to worry about distance. Naruto's voice returned to normal as the thick cloak of chakra disappeared. There were cracks all over his body, parts of his clothes and skin were burned off and parts of his skin were charred black. Remember, give him a good socking, brat, and are you sure? I can get us closer. Gamabunta stated as he was slightly concerned. He could see the shape the kid was in now, though he could only see it in a quick glance. He blinked when the kid's weight disappeared from his head. Gamabunta looked up and saw Naruto slowly raising. Gravity manipulation, he thought as Naruto stopped before chakra exploded around him again, but it was just a large amount of black and white chakra. It wasn't thick enough to block him out. Senka. Suzaku. Naruto yelled out, like if he didn't, he would pass out. Naruto was engulfed in chakra and it took the shape of a phoenix. Gamabunta wondered where he was getting this much chakra from, because doing what he was doing should kill him instantly. Naruto seemed to blaze forward, moving at a faster speed than before, not even caring what was in his way. Namely a Biju. Gamabunta, however, saw that Naruto didn't notice the giant hand coming his way, like he was only concentrating on the target. He could tell this was his last technique just on this fact. That or he was an idiot. Gamabunta used the last of his chakra to fire one last water bullet to distract Shukaku, and it worked. He dodged slightly to the left, giving Naruto enough time to get inside and away from the arm. The flame bird arced up towards the head and charged Gaara once on the same level. No you don't, Shukaku exclaimed as he used the sand to make a dome over Gaara. It did little if not nothing to protect the boy as the bird easily pierced through the dome and the beak of the bird opened and grabbed onto his face. Stripping Gaara from Shukaku's head and making a beeline for the ground, Shukaku screamed. I just got free, was the last thing the tailed beast said before its sand form broke apart and fell to the ground. A large explosion could be heard as the firebird slammed into the ground. Naruto's limp form rag-dolled across the ground before being caught by Sayuri. Naruto, she exclaimed with some worry, but Naruto just chuckled at this. She breathed out in relief as Naruto, while badly injured, seemed alright. She looked over to where Gaara was and saw him just laying on the ground. He looked broken and beaten, but he sat there wide-eyed. Hey, I beat him, Naruto said quietly as his eyes started to droop. All the pain and exhaustion was taking its toll on him. She just smirked down at him. Yeah, you did, idiot, she said quietly back to him and wondered what happened. How he got so strong. However, she couldn't get rid of that pit in her stomach that something bad was going to happen. Gomen. It was like she could hear his heartbeat, or was it hers as soon as she heard him apologize. Seems I still couldn't keep myself alive like you asked. At least I protected you this time, Naruto said finally as his eyes closed. As soon as they were full shut, one last heartbeat, the places with burned cracks seemed to explode forth into a fountain of blood. Sayuri tensed up in shock and horror as his blood splashed over her. Naruto, she screamed out in horror. She didn't waste a moment as she picked him up and pushed her body forward, faster than she had ever gone before. She needed to get him to a hospital. Meanwhile, Gaara just laid there watching as Sayuri ran back towards the village with Naruto's limp, bleeding body with her. He was confused and shocked that inhuman monster he was just fighting was being cared for. Something like that could fight with so much curiosity and inhuman rage and ability could have people that cared for him. He saw his idiotic persona and cheerful attitude that he didn't think the blonde knew anything about him. Then he saw him fight. He was not the happy-go-lucky person that he seemed. He was serious throughout it all before he unleashed his anger and hatred. The inhuman regeneration and strength. The blind fury that seemed to possess him at one point. Was it because of someone like that Uchiha? Was it because he had people special to him that he was able to become stronger? Could he be strong enough to lay down his life for abilities that could destroy his own body? Was he wrong? Gaara. A voice called out, and it was his so-called sister. She seemed worried. Why? He didn't get it. He had never been kind and he threatened to kill her on many occasions. Thank God you're okay. She was worried about him and truly seemed to care. Maybe, just maybe for one last time, he would try to be like Naruto. It seemed to work for him. Tamari. Kankuro. I'm sorry, Gaara stated in hope that he could start mending bridges. Maybe someday he could understand the strength that Naruto had. They didn't need words to speak to each other because they both lived the same lives. They were the same but took two different roads. It's just one was proven right